You ever been yanked out of dreamland at 4 in the morning by flashing red and blues, lighting up your bedroom like a discount rave? Because some woman named Karen called 911 and reported your parked Jeep for committing a crime? No? Just me? Fantastic. Buckle up, because what started stupid somehow turned legendary. 1 minute, I'm snoozing away in Pikachu pajamas, face planted on my pillow. And the next, I'm standing barefoot in my yard, trying to convince two very tired-looking cops that a cranky, robe-clad suburban warlord wants my Jeep towed from my own damn driveway. It kicked off like any regular Thursday. I came home beat, hungry, and totally over humanity. My Jeep Wrangler, blacked out, jacked up, spotless from a fresh detail, was sitting pretty in the driveway. Same spot it's been parked for 5.5 years, ever since I bought the house. That Jeep? It's my baby. I've dumped more money into it than I'm comfortable admitting in front of a therapist. I walked in, nooped some leftovers, played way too much Warzone, and passed out around 11:30 p.m. like a responsible degenerate. What I didn't know was that 2 houses over, Karen was plotting her version of D-Day, because apparently she had a house full of freeloaders and not enough concrete real estate for their sedans. Karen, in case you're wondering, was the unofficial dictator of our HOA, a woman who treated the cul-de-sac like her personal kingdom. Blonde helmet hair, bathrobe older than Google, and a voice like a blender full of rocks. She'd given my Jeep the stink eye before. Something about it being too hostile for the neighborhood's visual harmony. I figured she just needed a hobby. Turns out her hobby was me. She'd been waiting, lurking, for the perfect moment to strike. And it came, of course, at precisely 3:43 a.m. She stormed up my walkway in fuzzy slippers, red-faced and flapping her arms like a deranged traffic controller, because her fiancé's cousin couldn't find a parking space for their overnight wine and cheese sleepover. Now, you'd expect a rational adult to knock politely, and maybe, just maybe, use their words. But Karen? Nope. She pounded on my door like she was there to collect back taxes from a mobster. Still half asleep and blinking like a cave mole, I opened the door just in time to get verbally mugged. "Move your Jeep," she shrieked, jabbing her finger toward my driveway like it personally insulted her ancestry. "My guests have nowhere to park, and I've got a professional coming in the morning." It took me a good 10 seconds to register that this was in fact real life. I rubbed my eyes. "Karen, it's 4 in the damn morning." "I don't care," she barked. "I have important people here. Move it or I'll have it towed." I chuckled, not out of disrespect, though she sure took it that way, but because the idea of moving my own Jeep from my own driveway to appease a pack of late-night wine guests just sounded like pure comedy. "Not happening, Karen," I said, already shutting the door. "Fine," she yelled. "I'm calling 911. I paused. Surely she was bluffing. Nope. I peeked through the blinds just in time to watch her pace around my lawn, phone to ear, ranting like a prosecutor in a made-for-TV trial. "Yes, officer. There's a vehicle blocking access. Yes, it's technically in his driveway, but he's being non-compliant with the Neighborhood Code of Conduct." Neighborhood Code of Conduct? What was this? Suburban NATO? 11 minutes later, the familiar glow of cop lights lit up my house like a low-budget cop drama. 2 officers stepped out looking like they'd been expecting a domestic disturbance. Instead, they found me, Pikachu pajama pants, dollar store coffee, and the dawning realization that this was actually happening. Karen met them halfway, clutching a stack of HOA newsletters and a 3-ring binder full of hallucinated rules. I stood there, trying not to lose it, as she whipped out Exhibit A, a grainy photo she'd taken from her bedroom window at 3:36 a.m. of my Jeep minding its own business. The cops exchanged that look. "You know the one. We're definitely telling this story later." To their credit, they stayed chill. Super professional. They confirmed everything was legal, thanked me for my time, and very diplomatically suggested that Karen take her complaints to someone other than emergency services. Karen, predictably, huffed like a tea kettle about to blow, crossed her arms like she was posing for a villain poster, and muttered something about neighborhood decline. I waved the officers off and watched her stomp back to her house like she was auditioning for a reality show meltdown. But before disappearing inside, she whirled around and pointed at me like a Scooby-Doo villain. "You'll regret this," she growled. Honestly, I figured that was the end of it. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. I dramatically underestimated how far Karen was willing to go for 4 feet of imaginary real estate. I thought she'd cool off, be embarrassed, maybe even forget it happened. Yeah, I was wrong. By 8:15 a.m., before I'd even brushed my teeth, she'd filed a formal HOA complaint, blasted me in the neighborhood Facebook group for endangering community harmony, and demanded the next HOA meeting include my ongoing violations. At that point, I wasn't just a neighbor. I was a villain. I poured another cup of coffee and stepped outside to check on the Jeep, fully expecting to find it egged, keyed, or cursed by a suburban shaman. Instead, I found a crisp white envelope tucked under the wiper. Inside, a typed letter on official HOA letterhead, unsigned, but you could smell the Karen on it. "Dear homeowner," it began. "As a reminder, your vehicle must align with community parking regulations. Continued disregard for shared neighborhood responsibility may result in board-level consequences." Well, that was it. The HOA Cold War had officially gone nuclear. And I don't mean a war of fists. I mean the passive-aggressive kind, waged with bylaws, screenshots, yard signs, and enough pettiness to power a reality TV franchise. I should have known this wasn't just a one-night episode. With Karen, it was never just a one-off. It was a saga, a full-blown HOA soap opera. And all because my Jeep had the nerve to exist in the exact spot it legally belonged. The next morning kicked off with the sound of my neighbor Hank cracking up from across the street. I shuffled out onto the porch, still rocking those battle-worn Pikachu pajama pants, coffee in hand, and spotted him pointing right at my driveway. There, taped ever so gracefully to the hood of my Jeep with blue painter's tape, a surprisingly elegant touch for a lunatic, was yet another love letter from Karen. This one wasn't typed. Nope, it was handwritten in what could only be described as angry chicken scratch, underlined twice, with furious little arrows dancing around the words like they were trying to escape. Final warning, you are in violation of community expectations. Your refusal to act with civility is being documented. Parking privileges may be reviewed. Parking privileges. On my driveway, on my land. I genuinely didn't know if I should laugh or start chucking lawn gnomes. Karen wasn't just petty. She was unraveling like a cheap sweater in a tumble dryer. I peeled the note off, waved at Hank, who yelled, "Need backup?" and walked back inside, already brainstorming my next move like a general planning a counterstrike. Thing is, I grew up with 3 brothers. I majored in petty retaliation before I could drive. Karen wanted a drama series? Great. I had enough material to pitch a whole sitcom. That same afternoon, I rolled over to the hardware store and picked out the biggest, boldest slab of wood I could legally wedge into my Jeep. Sanded it smooth, painted it blinding white, then, in red letters the size of regret, I wrote, "Private driveway, not for Karen's guests." Underneath, in sleek black, "You block it, I box you in." I planted that thing right at the edge of my driveway, stepped back, and admired it like Michelangelo finishing the Sistine Chapel. Didn't take long for the drama llama to charge in. Karen came stomping down the sidewalk like a malfunctioning Roomba with a grudge, yelling before her orthopedic sandals even hit my grass. "You can't put that there," she barked. "Pretty sure I can," I replied, sipping my iced tea with Olympic-level calm. Private property, remember? It's an eyesore. It lowers neighborhood value. The HOA will be hearing about this. I shrugged. Might want to let them know about the whole 911 call over a parked car, too. Seems like that's the real threat to neighborhood value. She huffed so hard, I thought a lawn flamingo was going to take flight. Then she spun around mid-rant and stormed off, fingers already dialing before she cleared the curb. But guess what? The Jeep stayed. The sign stayed. And Karen's simmering rage? Oh, that stayed too, every time she stomped past my house. Then came Act 2, the flyers. Next morning, I stepped out to get the mail and saw every mailbox stuffed with paper. The headline, in blazing Comic Sans, how one neighbor is destroying our peace. It included a photo of my Jeep, still gorgeous, a snapshot of my sign, still glorious, and a melodramatic paragraph that made it sound like I was leading a vehicular rebellion against America itself. According to Karen, I was a danger to the community, a menace with bold fonts, a Jeep-owning anarchist spreading chaos through signage and bumper stickers. Darlene, the retired school teacher from across the street, strolled over holding a flyer, trying not to snort. "You see this mess?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Oh, I saw," I said, sipping my coffee. "Looks like I'm officially the villain now." "Congratulations," she grinned. Karen only goes after the ones she's scared of. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the houses, I caught sight of Karen pacing in front of her lawn again, clutching her phone, snapping pics of my sign like it was a crime scene. A couple hours later, she struck back with her own handcrafted disaster piece, right there on the patch of grass between the sidewalk and the street in front of my home. She jammed a laminated poster into the dirt. It read, "Neighborhood Safety Report, Reckless Parking." Beneath it, a cartoon drawing of a Jeep circled in red and slashed out like I was public enemy number 1. It looked like a second-grade art project designed by Spite. So now our neighborhood was officially a battleground. Two passive-aggressive adults waging war via lawn decor. But unlike most kids, we had printers, duct tape, solar lights, and enough cold fury to fuel a petty apocalypse. Over the next few days, things escalated like a bad soap opera. I added solar lights to my sign, lighting it up like a Christmas nativity for justice. Karen spray-painted hers neon yellow, like it was warning drivers of a radioactive Jeep. I slapped on a QR code that linked to video footage of her calling 911 at 4 a.m. She duct-taped over it, like a censorship czar. So I replaced her tape with a bold sticker that read, "Censorship is un-American." But this turf war didn't stay analog. It bled into cyberspace. Karen went full manifesto in the Facebook group, posting daily like she was running for HOA dictator. Every post had at least one all-caps sentence. Every single one. "We cannot allow disorder to spread, or our children will pay the price." Someone replied with a popcorn gif. They got banned. I tried to keep out of it, but it got tricky when people started cruising by my place like it was a landmark. One guy even knocked on my door, asking to take a selfie with the Jeep. At that point, I figured, if I was going to be infamous, I might as well own it. That weekend, I hosted a full-blown driveway dedication party. Nothing crazy, just some neighbors, burgers on the grill, Fleetwood Mac playing low, and Christmas lights strung over the Jeep like it was the Statue of Liberty. I even set up lawn chairs aimed directly at Karen's house, not to provoke her, of course. It was art, symbolic, peace through presence. People were loving it. Darlene brought deviled eggs. My buddy Joey made t-shirts that said, "Free the driveway." We wore them like a team at the Petty Bowl. And just like clockwork, Karen called the cops again. Same officer as before showed up, heard the soft tunes of dreams floating through the air, and audibly sighed. He asked if we could turn it down just a notch, wished us a good night, and bailed before Karen could gallop over waving her HOA binder, like the Constitution. But as I cleaned up that night, something clicked. This wasn't about the Jeep. It never really was. Karen wasn't just annoyed. She was obsessed. An obsession doesn't come from nowhere. Then I remembered what Darlene said. Karen only targets people who scare her. So I started digging. I pulled out old HOA newsletters, meeting minutes, public filings, anything I could get my hands on. And that's when I found it. 2 years ago, Karen suddenly appeared on the HOA board after someone named Larry moved away. But there were no election records, no official vote, no newsletter mention, nothing. It was like she just inserted herself, which wasn't just sketchy. It might have been straight up illegal. And in that moment, I knew I was onto something. This wasn't just a petty spat over a Jeep anymore. This was a mystery, a conspiracy, and I was already too deep to turn back. Karen had officially declared war over 4 tires and a patch of cement. She thought she was dealing with a minor annoyance. She had no clue she'd just picked a fight with someone too stubborn to blink, let alone back down. And now, I had a mission. I wasn't just defending a Jeep anymore. I was parking the truth right in her front yard like a monument. By Monday, the air in the neighborhood wasn't just warm. It was thick, not with heat, but with silent glares, awkward walks to the mailbox, and tension so dense it could have been sliced with a recycling bin lid. Karen had dropped words entirely. No more passive-aggressive comments. Now it was just icy stares and cryptic muttering, like she was cursing my driveway in ancient HOA Latin. But I wasn't backing off. Not because I needed revenge, though let's be real, it was tempting. I stayed in the fight because I knew I was right. And the deeper I dug, the more things stunk of cover-ups and HOA corruption. It all started to unravel at the dog park. Darlene's schnauzer had broken free, made a beeline straight into my shins, and while we were picking up his leash and her tote bag, I casually dropped a question. So, did you ever vote for Karen? Darlene tilted her head like I'd just asked if dogs could file taxes. Karen? Vote? I don't think we did. She just kind of showed up one day, clipboard in hand. That set off alarm bells louder than a doorbell camera catching porch pirates. She also mentioned that Larry, the guy who was on the board before, had moved out suddenly. Apparently, there was some kind of fallout with Karen over deck renovations and zoning drama. That night, I went digging, pulled up every HOA newsletter from the past few years like I was piecing together a cold case. And guess what? No formal announcement, no election notice, no meeting minutes. Larry just vanished, and somehow Karen slid into power like a villain sneaking into a throne room. So, I decided to stir the pot. I emailed the HOA management company, pretending to be just a concerned homeowner, politely asking for documentation about board appointments and voting records. And just for fun, I CC'd Karen directly. Subject line, clarification on your role. No reply. But the next morning, my mailbox had been egged. Not the house, not the lawn, just the mailbox. 4 eggs, 1 cracked on top, and 1 on each side like she was crowning it with yolk. It was too precise. That had Karen written all over it. Probably even matched her Pinterest board on creative vengeance. Later that day, I bumped into Joa, the quiet numbers guy who lived at the edge of the block. He wasn't chatty, but he'd shown up to every HOA meeting like clockwork. We were both grabbing mail at the community kiosk, and I figured I'd take a swing. You remember any vote where Karen got on the board? Joa smirked, looked around, then chuckled under his breath. Oh no, man, there was never a vote. She just started showing up with the binder one day, talking like she ran the place. Nobody wanted the headache of challenging her. Boom, there it was. Karen hadn't been elected, she'd just assumed the throne and nobody stopped her. At that point, I went full suburban journalist. I documented everything. Every flyer, every sign, every petty note she left. I started screen recording her HOA Facebook posts, where she was now claiming I was promoting neighborhood violence because a golden retriever barked near her fence. She was spiraling, and it was glorious. Then I found the smoking gun. While flipping through the HOA's expense reports, because I'd used the very bylaws Karen probably never read to request them, I spotted something fishy. A payment, pulled from the Neighborhood Improvement Fund. Label, hospitality reimbursement. event coordination. Amount, suspiciously high. Payee, someone sharing Karen's last name. Then I remembered her 4 a.m. tantrum. Important guests, she'd said. At the time, I figured it was cousins or wine club weirdos, but this looked more like she used HOA money to throw a party for officials. I dug deeper. Sure enough, in one of her old Facebook photos, blurry but damning, there was a guy wearing a badge. Turned out, he was a zoning inspector from the city council. It all clicked. Karen wasn't just playing neighborhood queen. She was trying to butter up officials. Probably for some shady permit. Maybe to turn her house into a bed and breakfast, or a secret Airbnb empire right in the middle of our sleepy street. That night, I went full true crime mode. I printed every receipt, every post, every recording, created a folder on my computer called Karengate, and put together a hard copy binder labeled Operation Jeep Justice. Because if I was going to blow this up, I was going to do it in style. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. At 6:49 p.m., Darlene texted me, "Secret HOA meeting. Tonight, 7:30 p.m., Karen's house. Bring popcorn." Say less. I threw on a hoodie, grabbed my folder, and made my way down the street like I was going undercover. Did I walk in the front door like a normal person? Of course not. I crept around the side, just like Darlene instructed. She'd cracked her window open, just enough for the audio to travel. I crouched below, phone out, recording every muffled word like a neighborhood spy. Inside, Karen was livid. She was fuming about my sign, my disruptive presence, and how I was ruining her progress. Then someone asked the question I'd been dying to hear. A man's voice, a little shaky. "So, about the reimbursement for hospitality. Are we supposed to use HOA funds that way?" There was a silence. Then Karen snapped, "Don't question the process. The board approved it. It's done." Another voice chimed in, "But we didn't vote. There wasn't a meeting." Karen, full-on dictator mode now. "Do you want to be on the board? No? Then don't interfere." And just like that, I stopped the recording. That was the nail in the coffin. The next morning, I sent the audio straight to the HOA management company along with every file I'd gathered. But I didn't stop there. I went full whistleblower. I printed duplicates and slid copies into every mailbox on the block. Neighbors who hadn't spoken to me in months were now texting me popcorn emojis. By sunset, the HOA Facebook page looked like a battlefield. Comments pouring in, screenshots flying, everyone demanding answers. Karen, silent, didn't even come outside for her mail. And that's how a Jeep, a sign, and one very determined homeowner cracked open a full-blown HOA scandal. Karen's laminated sign vanished overnight, leaving nothing but a lopsided stick poking out of a bare patch of grass like the grave of bad ideas. But the real shock came the next morning, when I opened my inbox and saw it. A formal email from the HOA. Subject, emergency board meeting. Open to all members. Public forum. Location, community hall. Topic, review of board conduct and appointment legitimacy. Karen had officially gone too far, too fast, and underestimated the one thing she couldn't micromanage. Neighbors actually paying attention. I leaned back in my chair, sipping coffee, the Jeep gleaming in its rightful driveway spot. The sky was melting into sunset, casting orange and gold down the street like it was blessing the moment. What started with a 4 a.m. tantrum and a Jeep had now grown into a full-blown reckoning. And I wasn't backing down. Not yet. Not even close. The meeting was set for Thursday at 5:45 p.m. By 5:30, the community hall parking lot looked like Coachella for homeowners. People who hadn't been seen outside their houses in years showed up dragging lawn chairs, coolers, and folding tables like they were prepping for tailgate bingo. Darlene brought homemade brownies. Joa had a notepad and 4 pens. And even Hank, who usually only ventured out for garbage day or bass fishing, rolled up with a lawn chair and a giant tub of popcorn. The energy? Charged. Not angry, just expectant, like everyone knew something juicy was about to drop, and nobody was missing it. I walked in with my binder tucked under one arm and a GoPro strapped to my chest, like I was about to film a true crime documentary. Darlene gave me a subtle nod that said, "You ready?" I nodded back, full cute room energy. Karen showed up exactly 1 minute before the meeting started. She wore a stiff navy blazer like she was about to give a Hank talk on how to tank a neighborhood in 12 easy steps. She beelined to the front of the room, jaw tight, eyes forward, not acknowledging a soul. 3 other board members followed, none of them looking particularly thrilled to be her backup dancers. One of them, Marcia, kept fiddling with her reading glasses like she was hoping they'd make her invisible. The meeting opened with the usual droning, call to order, attendance, approval of minutes. Nobody cared. Everyone was just waiting for the fireworks. And then, boom, Joa raised his hand. "I'd like to address an issue regarding board appointment procedures." Karen tried to swat him away. "We can save that for the miscellaneous section at the end." Joa didn't budge. "This isn't miscellaneous. It's about how you got on the board. There was no vote, no record. You've been acting as chair without ever being appointed." Gasps, murmurs, Karen's face flushed tomato red. She gripped the armrests of her chair so tight, it looked like she was trying to rip the arms off. I stepped forward. "I have documentation," I said. "No vote, no appointment minutes, and an audio recording from last week's secret meeting where you threatened the board and admitted to misusing HOA funds." Karen stood, shaking. "That recording was illegal. This is slander." I calmly handed a flash drive to the HOA's legal advisor, who, surprise, had shown up last minute once the online buzz started catching fire. He plugged it in, clicked around, and played the audio through the room's ancient squeaky speakers. Karen's voice filled the room, dismissive, arrogant, admitting there was no vote, declaring herself the board, talking down to everyone. It was brutal. It was undeniable. It was everything. The only thing better than that is seeing your subscription to this channel. The silence that followed was thick, not awkward, final. Like a judge was about to drop the gavel on a courtroom drama. Then, one clap. Then another. And within seconds, the room broke into scattered applause. Not wild, just satisfied. Karen tried to speak. Her voice cracked. "I did what I had to, for the good of the community. Sometimes leadership means bending rules." "No," Darlene shot back. "Sometimes leadership means not putting yourself above everyone else." Then Marcia stood, the timid one. She looked Karen dead in the eye. I moved to suspend Karen pending an investigation into abuse of power and HOA funds. Joa raised his hand. "Second." "All in favor?" the legal advisor asked. Hands shot up like wildfire. Even one of Karen's usual sidekicks raised his, slowly, like his arm was rebelling against him. Karen stood frozen, jaw clenched, eyes darting like she was deciding whether to scream or sprint out. The vote passed. Karen was officially suspended, effective immediately. But oh, it didn't end there. I went home and did what any responsible citizen does in 2025. I edited the footage, uploaded it. Title: HOA Karen gets exposed and voted out in front of entire neighborhood. The video was a masterpiece. It started with her calling 911 over my Jeep, cut to her yard signs, her 4 a.m. freakout, and finally, the audio clip that dropped the curtain. I added captions, zoomed in on her face the moment she realized she lost, even included a freeze frame with dramatic music. By the time I woke up the next morning, it had 30,000 views. By lunch, 100,000. Comments poured in. People from across the country shared their Karen horror stories, reaction videos, memes, dramatic piano remixes of her 911 call. My phone didn't stop buzzing. The now Karenless HOA board released a public statement, promising a full audit and thanking me for bringing community concerns to light. I nearly choked on my coffee reading that email. Karen? Silent. Her Facebook? Deleted. Her signs? Gone. her blinds permanently shut, her mailbox stuffed to the brim with ignored newsletters. Rumor had it she was moving. Sure enough, a for sale sign popped up within the week, tilted, bitter-looking, like it had been stabbed into the yard in defeat. A neighbor swore they saw Karen loading suitcases into her SUV, jaw clenched so tight it looked like she might snap her own molars. No goodbyes, no farewell potlucks, just silence and relief as she drove off one final time. We thought that was it. But life's got a wicked sense of humor. About 3 weeks later, Darlene called me, laughing so hard she could barely breathe. "You're not going to believe this," she said between giggles. "Guess who just bought the house next to mine?" I didn't need to guess. Karen. She'd moved 2 neighborhoods over. Still HOA territory. Still strict. And hilariously, right next to Darlene. She said Karen's face, when they locked eyes across the property line, looked like a mix of horror movie and cartoon villain banana peel slip. But this time, Darlene was ready. "I've got my binder locked and loaded," she told me proudly. "Let her try something. I dare her." Back in our neighborhood, things finally settled down. The signs came down, the Jeep stayed up, and peace returned, with just the right dash of sass. Every so often, someone would drive by slowly and point. I knew they recognized the house from the video. I didn't mind, because this story had become more than a petty HOA feud. It turned into a little slice of resistance, a reminder that the loudest person isn't always the one in charge, that sometimes all it takes to push back is a wooden sign, a red paintbrush, and the audacity to not move your car. If you like this story, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And we also recommend listening to the story about how a Karen organized a wedding in my yard without permission. So I invited a gang of bikers too. Well, you can listen to the rest of the story. Just click on the icon pointing to the arrow. Thank you for watching.